Everyone in the courtroom laughed when the teenager spoke except him. But moments later, the judge turned pale when the boy revealed who he really was, and changed the entire courtroom forever. The courtroom laughs. It was a cloudy Tuesday morning when the courtroom doors opened, and a teenage boy stepped inside. He didn't look like he belonged there. No suit, no briefcase, just a plain hoodie, jeans, and a small folder. In his hand, people turned to look, some curious, some confused. He walked straight to the defendant's table and stood there quietly. The judge, an older man with silver glasses and a stern face, glanced down at the paperwork, then looked back up at the boy. "Excuse me," the judge said with a slight smirk. "Are you here for someone?" The boy cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm here to represent myself." Laughter echoed across the room. A few people in the back chuckled out loud. The prosecutor leaned over to the judge and whispered, "Is this serious?" The judge didn't answer right away. He just stared at the boy, trying to figure him out. "You do realize this is a real court, right?" the judge asked. The boy nodded. "I understand the risk, but I know my case better than anyone." The judge sighed. "Very well, but don't waste this court's time." People still whispered and laughed under their breath. Some even pulled out their phones, expecting a funny clip to share online later. The boy opened his folder, his hands shaking just a little, but when he began to speak, his voice was steady. "Clear, Your Honor. I respectfully request the dismissal of these charges based on a violation of my Fourth Amendment rights." He began. The room grew a little quieter. He continued, referencing legal terms and previous case examples, backing up his points with documents he had printed himself. The judge raised an eyebrow. The prosecutor stopped smiling. No one had expected this. This wasn't some smart-mouthed teen trying to play lawyer. This was something else. Minute by minute, the courtroom's laughter faded. Whispers turned into stunned silence. The boy never once raised his voice or lost his focus. He wasn't just defending himself, he was teaching everyone a lesson they didn't know they needed. By the time he finished, the only sound in the room was the quiet turning of pages and the rapid tapping of the court reporter's keyboard. The courtroom had gone from mocking him to listening. Mockery and doubt. After the boy finished his first argument, there was an eerie silence in the courtroom. The same people who had laughed just minutes ago were now looking at him with disbelief. Some didn't know whether to be impressed or confused. The judge leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his desk. "That was unexpected," he muttered under his breath. The prosecutor, a well-dressed man in his 40s, finally stood up. He looked at the boy, almost amused. "Your Honor," he began confidently, "with all due respect, this young man is not licensed. This isn't a school debate. We cannot allow this to continue as if it's valid." The judge nodded slowly. "I understand your concern, but he's made no legal errors so far. Let's hear him out." The prosecutor tried to poke holes in the boy's defense. He fired back with technical language, legal tricks, and confidence gained from years in court. But the boy didn't flinch. He took notes quietly, then responded with calm, clear counter-arguments. "That ruling you referenced, sir, was overturned 2 years ago. I believe the current case you're looking for is Henderson v. Texas. 2021, he said, passing over a copy of the ruling. The prosecutor paused. He looked at the paper. The judge looked at it too. It was correct. The boy had just corrected a professional attorney, and done it respectfully. Whispers started again in the room, but this time they were different. It wasn't laughter, it was curiosity. The judge sat up straighter, now taking the teenager very seriously. "Mr. Langston," he said, referring to the prosecutor, "I think we need to look beyond appearances." But not everyone was convinced. A few people in the crowd still rolled their eyes. A guard near the door chuckled and whispered to another officer, "It's a stunt. He probably watched too many court shows." The boy heard them but didn't react. He stayed focused on the case. His calmness began to shift the mood. The judge started asking him questions, hard ones, and the boy answered each with precision, never stumbling. Slowly, something incredible began to happen. The courtroom, once full of doubt and mockery, was now leaning in not to laugh, but to learn. The boy's voice wasn't just being heard now, it was being respected. The judge leaned forward in his chair, adjusting his glasses as he looked at the teenager with growing interest. "Where did you learn all this?" he finally asked. The boy hesitated for a moment, then replied, "Mostly, at home. I've been studying law since I was 13. The courtroom grew still again. The answer was simple, but something about the way he said it made everyone pause. The prosecutor's confidence was starting to crack. He tried again, throwing out a complicated legal question meant to trap the boy, something even junior lawyers would struggle with, but the boy didn't miss a beat. He calmly explained the statute, then referenced a similar case from years ago, showing exactly how the law applied to his situation. The judge leaned back, stunned. The courtroom murmurs returned, but this time, it wasn't disbelief. It was awe. Asterisk, I have to ask. The judge said slowly, are you really representing yourself with no legal training? Asterisk, the boy took a deep breath. Not exactly, he said. I've never been to law school, but I've spent thousands of hours reading law books, watching real trials, and practicing arguments at home. I even write mock cases for fun. Asterisk, laughter didn't follow. There was only quiet. The bailiff raised his eyebrows. The court clerk stopped typing and just stared. The boy's words were honest, humble but powerful. This wasn't just natural talent. This was the result of hard work, dedication, and passion. Asterisk, the prosecutor, now visibly uncomfortable, tried to object again. Your Honor, we can't treat this like a real case. He's just a teenager. Asterisk, the judge turned sharply toward him. Mr. Langston, he's handled this courtroom better than some licensed attorneys I've seen. I will decide what's real and what isn't. Asterisk, and just like that, the atmosphere shifted. The balance of power in the room, something so often taken for granted, was tipping in the boy's favor. A moment ago, he had been a joke. Now, he was a threat. A real one. Asterisk, people in the gallery started whispering again, but this time their tone had changed. Who is this kid? Someone said. How does he know all this? Said another. Asterisk, the answer wasn't clear yet, but what everyone knew now was that this wasn't just some bold teenager. This was a mind far beyond his years, and he had only just begun. After a short break, the courtroom resumed. The mood had completely changed. People were no longer amused or curious, they were captivated. Even the judge seemed more alert now, his tone more respectful. The boy stood, quietly, waiting for the session to begin again. When it did, the judge leaned forward and spoke directly to him. Asterisk, I want to ask you something simple, he said. Who are you? Really? Asterisk, the boy looked around the courtroom, aware that every eye was on him. Then he reached into his folder and pulled out a letter. He walked it up to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. The judge opened it, adjusting his glasses again as he read. His expression slowly changed from neutral to surprised. He looked back up at the boy, this time with wide eyes. Asterisk, this is a legal internship recommendation, signed by 3 practicing attorneys. The judge said aloud. You've worked with a law firm. Asterisk, the boy nodded. Yes, sir. They took me in after I kept sending them my legal briefs and mock cases. I've been working with them remotely for over a year now. They've reviewed my work and encouraged me to take the bar exam once I turn 18. Asterisk, gasps spread across the room. The courtroom had never been this silent. The bailiff shook his head in disbelief. Even the prosecutor looked stunned. The judge stared at the paper again, as if trying to believe what he was reading. These aren't just random signatures. These are respected lawyers, he said, almost to himself. Asterisk, why didn't you tell us this from the beginning? The judge asked. Asterisk, the boy looked down for a moment before answering. Because no one ever takes me seriously when they see my face. I knew if I told people who I was first, they'd still think it was fake. I wanted to let the truth come out. Through my actions, asterisk, there was a deep silence after that. No one had anything to say, not even the prosecutor. For the first time in the entire courtroom, people saw the boy not as a child playing dress-up, but as someone who had earned their respect the hard way, asterisk, and in that moment, something shifted. The courtroom didn't just see a teenager anymore. They saw a rising star, one who had already proven the power of knowledge, preparation, and quiet strength. Asterisk. The silence in the courtroom felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. The judge slowly placed the letter down and looked at the boy with new eyes, filled not with doubt, but with respect. Then, without waiting another moment, he turned to the prosecutor. Mr. Langston, he said firmly, you will drop this case immediately. Asterisk. The prosecutor hesitated. Your Honor, asterisk, no, the judge interrupted. You've been out-argued, out-prepared, and outclassed by someone half your age. This courtroom will not punish talent. The charges are dismissed. Asterisk. The sound of the judge's gavel echoed through the room. But this time, it was more than just a legal decision, it was a moment of justice. A round of applause broke out, slowly at first, then stronger. People rose to their feet, clapping, not out of politeness, but out of admiration. The boy stood still, stunned, almost as if he couldn't believe it himself. Asterisk. He looked down at the table, breathing deeply, trying to hold back tears. His hands shook, but not from fear, from relief. From years of not being taken seriously, years of being told he was just a kid. And now, in front of a full courtroom, he had finally been heard. Asterisk. That's when someone stood up in the front row. A woman with tired eyes and a soft smile. She had been silent the whole time, but now she stepped forward slowly. That's my son, she said, her voice breaking. He taught himself everything. I couldn't afford tutors or school extras. But every night, I'd find him in his room, reading case files on his phone until he fell asleep. Asterisk. People turned to look at her. She wasn't dressed fancy. She wasn't looking for attention. But in that moment, her quiet pride filled the room. The boy saw her and finally smiled a small, trembling smile. He whispered, "Thanks, Mom," just loud enough for her to hear. The judge stood. "Son, if you ever want to attend law school, I'll personally write your recommendation. This country needs people like you." The courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like something bigger, like the moment the world stopped judging a book by its cover and started reading what was inside. By the next morning, the courtroom moment had already gone viral. Someone had recorded the boy's defense from the back row and posted it online. Within hours, the video spread across social media like wildfire. Headlines appeared: "Teen defends himself in court and wins. Self-taught genius shocks legal system. The boy who made a judge apologize." People from all over the world watched the clip in disbelief. News anchors called it inspiring, legal experts called it unprecedented, and everyday people called it hope. But for the boy, the biggest moment wasn't the fame or the attention. It was the quiet walk he shared with his mother that night on the way home. No cameras, no applause, just the two of them, hand in hand, walking through the neighborhood. That once doubted him. "I didn't think anyone would listen," he whispered. His mother smiled, her voice soft but full of pride. "They had no choice. You made them listen." In the days that followed, emails poured in. Scholarships, internships, TV interviews, even top law schools, who usually never contacted students directly, sent letters offering full rides. Tests needed, but the boy didn't let it change him. He still wore the same hoodie, still studied every night, still stayed humble. The judge who once doubted him became one of his greatest supporters. He invited the boy back to sit in on real cases and even asked him to speak to new law graduates. The same courtroom that once laughed at him now treated him as a peer. A young man who had not only learned the law but reminded everyone what justice truly meant. Years later, that boy became one of the youngest licensed attorneys in state history, and on his first official case as a lawyer, he stood before a new judge, representing a teenager who had been unfairly accused, just like he once was. As he looked across the courtroom, he didn't see opponents or critics. He saw people who needed truth, fairness, and someone brave enough to speak up. He straightened his tie, opened his case file, and smiled. Because now, he wasn't just the boy who surprised a courtroom. He was the man who changed it forever. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and hit subscribe for more powerful stories on deep wounds. Join the journey. Your support keeps these voices alive.